And with me in studio, I'm joined by David Osiani, who is a governance expert, to just look and weigh in on the week that was. So in case you're joining us now, welcome aboard. And let's go straight into it. And we start with what is expected today as the ouster of Kithure Kindiki. And it looks like his fate is sealed based on what we have seen happening and based on what we have seen Jubilee doing as what they would call a cleanup. Now, there's an article on page 7 of the Standard which says Meru MPs beg Jubilee to spare Kindiki the sack. Is that possible? It looks like the die has already been cast. But according to this particular article, they say that he is, or looking at it from the politics of numbers and regions, it looks like he's the only one from that part of the country that has a post, so to speak, in government. So his removal, of course, makes it a little bit more difficult for Jubilee to balance the numbers when it comes to political appointments. So, is his fate sealed or not? Let me ask you, David Osiani, your thoughts on this and whether you think there is any, room left for him to be spared.
No, I think, Mike, the purge will not stop. I bet it will go all the way to the National Assembly. Having seen where it started and the determination in the Jubilee faction to try and oust those people who are seemingly allied to the deputy president, I do not foresee the purge stopping. Mm-hmm. And so there is a very high likelihood that Professor Kindiki Kithure, who was a teacher at UON when I was the president of SONU there, and my friend, will have to almost obviously face the sack as well. Because I look at the Millicent Omangas when they were told you're being fired. Everybody decided to save their wallets and do whatever it may to say that they are in debt. Parliamentarians, you saw the Sankoks of this world going all gaga about suddenly finding a new love for their party leader, Uhuru Kenyatta. So I do not see the likelihood of any change of mind. Matter of factly, I guess a lot of senators who are Jubilee allied, having seen how strong-willed their party leader has become, they will vote to have Kindiki ousted, and most likely.
Yeah, and of course this now leaves the question and begs the question and takes us back to the fact that our parties do not have ideology that one can follow. So it becomes even difficult to understand when somebody is being sacked, what really is their reason for being sacked. Is it because they support a certain person or they have gone against the ideology of the party? Do you see a time anywhere, anytime soon? Because we continue then to be under the whims of the party leaders, and we know that majority of them are probably party leaders by virtue of the support they have from the communities. So do we see a time where we can have parties that are more ideology driven as opposed to, the politics we know of tribe?
Yeah, the personality and ethnic politics remains a curse of the African continent. And, I don't want us to be too hard on ourselves. Americans and the Europeans and all those advanced countries achieved that level of democracy only because they are 200 plus years. But again, that is no excuse for doing it wrong, because example has been set for us by the better parts of, the more democratic nations. Now, the problem with us is we have not learned to pursue an ideology. We don't even understand what is an ideology, let alone pursue it. The Kenyan electorate does not know what their parties represent. All they know is that the party leader speaks in my mother's language. They need to be able to understand what is our party's ideology. If we say that we are social democrats, what does being a social democrat mean? If we say we are center-leaning left or center-leaning right, what does it mean to be a centrist, that is oriented towards socialism, or a centrist oriented slightly or bent slightly towards capitalism? What is capitalism? What is socialism? socialism. These ideas have never been explained to the electorate. They do not understand how we work. In fact, for them, they believe the difference between Jubilee, URP, ODM, those parties, the Mbas party that was for Kiraito, all those other parties have no meaning except who is their party leaders. And that is the wrong notion in politics. We need to get to a point where we teach our children. And I actually think that these are lessons that need to be instilled in our children from the primary school level, so that as they grow, they know that what does this mean for our economy. When you go to countries like the UK, the Conservatives have ingrained this in their children. The Labour Party have ingrained this in their children. The Lib Dems have done it right from when the people are young. And in fact, the reward to be a parliamentarian is courtesy of your service to the party from your younger years. So they will say, you have been with us since you were 18 or 16. You have grown in the party. You understand what we represent, and therefore we award you the ticket to go and fight for us at the ballot, and if successful, represent us in parliament. But that's not the case here. The case here is that tomorrow, anyone will jump ship from Jubilee to ODM, fight with the chair there because the seat they want they did not get, go to independent, leave independent, cross over to Mbas party, leave Mbas, go to POA. There is no discipline because we don't know what we represent.
And of course, that now gives us the reason as to why we see what we've talked about earlier on, with politicians who will say one thing today and turn around and say something completely different, simply because the party leader at that point in time is not representing their personal interest. And as much as politics is about personal interest, to what level, I guess, is what matters. And at what point will the electorate get the right leaders that we require? Because then where we are today as a country is purely as a result of the leaders that we have. And maybe as we summarize on that, just your thoughts on whether we are metamorphosizing. You've mentioned that the reason why America has the democracy they have is because of they've paid the price of time. Are we getting there? Are we getting there? Are we getting there soon enough? Or have we stagnated in tribal politics?
No, I don't think we need to take 200 years like America for us to get there. It would be wrong because a template has been set for us. Americans had no one to set the template for them. They grappled with this as they grew along. They cut the flesh that was not necessary and trimmed it to remain with what they deemed useful. And so we are not going to wait to reinvent some wheel. There have been examples, and America is not the only example. There are examples out and away from America or the European context. There are examples even in the Scandinavian countries. So we need to just see, is this what we want? Of course, it's not going to be any happy glee moment for, for the leaders of these parties who have anchored their leadership on tribe. Because the moment you play and tinker with that, they are going to be able to literally stand for nothing. That's why there are very few leaders in this country who will get support across the country. Most of them retreat to their bases. There are very few of them who would be elected, even in cosmopolitan areas. And so I look forward to a day we will advance our democracy to an extent we will know this is what we stand for. You see, if the purge in Jubilee today had been against people who stood for something, then the whole country will stop and say, no, that person represents our ideal. That person represented us. That person stood for what we want as a nation. That person stood for fighting against graft. That person stood for improving the livelihoods, the standards of living of the nation. But because they stood for totally nothing, because the people being purged stood for their political party leaders, and when it deemed fit, they literally talked not so much sense, otherwise known as nonsense, then this purge, there will be no sympathy. Now, this is a call to those who have found themselves in those offices conveniently. Irungu Kangata and their friends, that now that you are there, exemplify leadership. Stand for something and be consistent about it.
Let's hope that message gets across. Let's look at other things that have happened this week. And this week is where we have seen Kenya hit the 1,000 mark in COVID-19 positive cases. We are also looking at a time where Kibra might be locked down, given the numbers have risen. And of course, high-density areas and slum areas have been a concern right from the word go. But as mentioned earlier, we seem to wait for things to tilt negatively before we take any action. I'm not sure there's any action that could have been taken with Kibra, but looking at even the guidelines by WHO of social distancing, a place like Kibra, even if we get cases there, what really can be done, given that even the proximity of house to house is already a challenge? But let's start with the fact that we've hit the 1,000 mark, but wait on the basis also that our testing is not up to speed to what it should be. Are we at a time where we need to ensure that we increase the testing to get the right figures?
No, I actually think that one of the excuses that has been given until people are tired is that there's a global supply chain problem of these test kits. And that excuse, I would dare say, is literally true for those of us who understand how these things work. Literally every country that would be exporting some of these kits are hoarding them. They are holding them back for their personal use because everyone fears coronavirus. No one was sufficiently prepared. Even those that thought they were overly prepared have finally realized they were underprepared. If the US has run out of these kits and cannot even have them sufficiently, how much more a country whose GDP is a fraction of the United States like Kenya? And so that is a problem we understand. I remember that at the onset, there was a projection by the Director General of Health saying that we would expect 10,000 people infected by the end of April. And his projection was based that there would be an infection rate of 2 to 3% of the country. Whereas we did not test enough to be able to achieve 10,000 cases, if you look at the cases achieved so far versus the number of tests done, it means that his projection was right. Now, if that is the case, then we have something to worry about. It seemed we worried about 10,000 as a figure, but not 2 to 3% infection rate as a number. And so people decided to start going back to their ways of life normally. That is how we have ended up with an infection now in Kibra that was guarded from possible infection if we had all become Kenyans, patriotic Kenyans. If we had agreed to keep social distance, if we had agreed to continually wear masks so long as we are in public spaces, if we had agreed to wash our hands at the very least if we can't access sanitizers, then I would guarantee you that the infection rates would be low. Thankfully for Kenyans, this coronavirus has not been rabid because I bet these measures have been put in place and because we are a generally young population. But here's the catch. The day we let go of some of these rules and open our borders and go full-fledged and get back to inter-county movement, the first stop, guys will go partying outside Nairobi, outside Kisumu, outside Kakamega, outside Muranga, outside Lamu. They will all cross other counties to go and visit parents, friends, colleagues who are of advanced age. There, right there will be our problem. We will witness deaths that we have never witnessed. So, Kenyans, I think the best thing for us is to just keep some of these measures. And should the ban be lifted, the one thing I bet must not be lifted yet is inter-county movement.
Okay, and you've rightly projected what might happen. The truth of the matter is, David, that even when we flatten the curve, it does not mean that we'll have gotten rid of COVID-19 completely. However, the minute there is that announcement that now we are a little bit better, open up the borders, let people, start moving around, the chances of people partying, so to speak, is likely to happen. What should we be doing now to ensure that that doesn't happen? Because then we are staring at what they're calling the second wave. And the second wave becomes dangerous because it will get us as ill-prepared as the first one did.
You see, the moment there will be a declaration saying that now this has gotten a bit better. If Kenyans have not been disciplined now, when it is terrible, you can only imagine how Kenyans will be when it gets to a point we are saying the borders are flung open. I guess there needs to be a very concerted and deliberate behavior change communication strategy to ensure that Kenyans get how deep this is. We need to get some of those champions or families that have lost loved ones, courtesy of coronavirus, to speak and tell Kenyans, guys, listen, this is not the way to do it. Yesterday you heard that there is a prominent personality in the country who hosted 18 people in her home and has ended up, therefore, contracting the virus. Why? Just lack of discipline. I want Kenyans to appreciate the role of discipline in combating the spread of coronavirus. It is upon us. You are not doing it for anyone. In fact, I saw a tweet going around saying, do we wear masks because we fear to be arrested or because we don't want to contract coronavirus? And I bet it is because many people just fear to be arrested and to go and be put in quarantine centers. And so to avoid the possibility of getting into a terrible second wave with fatalities that no one would know, Kenyans, I ask us, not you, us including myself, I beseech us, ensure that these measures put in place, you practice them strictly. You're not doing it for anyone. If not for you, do it for your loved ones who may contract the virus and have no immunity to be able to weather that storm and therefore will die of it.
Well put. And Kenyans, we have a huge responsibility right there. And still talking about the coronavirus, one of the things that we saw happen this week is also the re-emergence of the Kenya-TZ diplomatic row. We know this is not something that starts now, but of course, with COVID-19, with the president announcing last week that the border is going to be closed, we've also seen Tanzania react and respond. We had one, I think it was a minister in TZ, say that, fine, let all other drivers through except Kenyan drivers. Your thoughts on what this is likely to be, although I understand, I don't have verification for this, but I understand the two presidents spoke and possibly have dealt with that particular row.
The diplomatic tiff between Kenya and Tanzania dates ages back. And it's a love and hate relationship constantly. One time we love each other so much, another time we are willing to sever the links and move on with life. But it behooves us, to try and find a middle ground for all this. We are trading partners. We import quite extensively, especially agricultural products, from Tanzania. And because there has been this lockdown, slowed down economy, and the locust invasion, I see that we need each other. Tanzania needs Kenya as much as Kenya needs Tanzania. And so they have to sit and find a solution. I am certain that at the Foreign Affairs Ministry, we have capable men and women, ladies and gentlemen, who will sit down and amicably resolve this before it gets to a point where it is nasty. However, our Tanzania brothers needs to allow research the space. They need to appreciate that research is the guide towards solution of such magnitude as corona. You're not going to solve the problem by believing it is not there. Belief that it is not there does not make it go away. And so this pandemic is here with us, but I bet there will be a solution for it.
Your thoughts on how Tanzania has handled it, because Kenya didn't seem to have a choice as to whether one of the, swearing in things that the president will do is to protect the country and its citizens. And that's precisely what he was doing when he says, look, we'll have to close the border, given that Tanzania has a different approach to how they're dealing with COVID-19. Your thought as to whether Kenya had any other choice than to close the border, really?
I don't think there was any other choice. And you need to know that the borders have not even been closed. Namanga is still open. What these people have not agreed on is the testing protocol for the truck drivers. Tanzania is a happy-go-lucky, we don't care about corona nation. Kenya says we care that this disease has swept people in other parts of the world, and we are trying to do everything possible to avoid or to stem the tide, to ensure that we don't get to those levels of infection. Now, President Kenyatta had no choice but to put in stringent measures towards, getting the country safe at all cost. And therefore, this tiff is absolutely unnecessary. And President Magufuli, I hope, appreciates where Kenya comes from. They have a different protocol. They have a different approach to dealing with coronavirus than you. At the very least, meet at a middle ground. And the middle ground here seems to be get people tested. Kenya has decided we're going to get people tested. Tanzania doesn't want their drivers tested. What will we do? So there are brains better than us at foreign policy and handling foreign relationships and foreign relations. I hope they get a solution.
All right, and maybe as we conclude your closing remarks, as we look forward to another week, quite a lot has been happening politically. We have, activity that's going on, and maybe the timing may even be very, intentional by the political players, given that right now you cannot hold rallies, you cannot gather people. So any noise that is to be made is purely going to be done from either boardrooms or from Zoom conferences or from television stations. Your thoughts on where we are expected to, or what we project to see next week, politically speaking, given that we are expecting that Kithure Kindiki is likely to be ousted today?
Moments of crisis, Mike, are moments of introspection. Moments of crisis are moments of reflection. This is a moment for Kenyans to reflect, right from the model of their politics, what they want in terms of governance, who they think suits them best, how they believe that person needs to be reached. Is it possible for Kenyans to sit down and reflect and say, yes, we as Kenyans are culpable for the ongoings and the goings on in the country because we have never risen. Whenever we have been needed to rise to the occasion, we have fallen instead of rising to the occasion in terms of electoral politics. Is it moments for Kenyans to look and scrutinize at their leaders keenly and decide that based on what we have experienced, our MPs have been jokers as we were looking for solutions for their own constituents around coronavirus. Our governors and senators have been players, and we decide that this is not going to happen again. Kenyans have a choice. To the public leaders, to the political leaders, to the policy makers in this country, here is a moment of reflection of how to handle our public health. Coronavirus has shown us how ill-prepared some of the counties are. Remember that health is a devolved counties, and governors were going to kill anyone who dares say that this function be reverted back to national government. And I am a supporter of devolving as many functions as we can devolve. But if governors cannot borrow a leaf from the Makueni governor, Kivutha Kibwana, and his counterparts elsewhere, who have attempted to do a wonderful job with public health, with their health and universal health coverage, then they need to shut up and revert functions of that county to the national government. Here is an opportunity to look at ourselves and say, are we prepared for the next pandemic? Because it is not going to spare us. Remember, Ebola was a pandemic. It spared Kenya. SARS was a pandemic. It spared Kenya. COVID did not spare us, and certainly another is coming. Let us do what we have been put in office to do, service for the nation.
Absolutely. Well, David Osiani, we're going to wind up.
But we, eventually, we shall overcome.
All right, we shall. And yes, that brings me actually to the next part that I wanted to bring in. And I, as I was doing my research, I discovered that you also put to good use your baritone voice, and you're launching a song today. Maybe as we wind up, tell us a little bit about the song that you're launching today.
Today at 2 p.m. on YouTube, I will be launching a song called We Shall Overcome, which is a timeless song of the Negroes, as they were known. But it's just an encouragement to us as we go through this. I have looked at the numbers of jobs that are lost. I've seen how families struggle day to day. I am looking at how our industries have been shut, salaries have been slashed. And sometimes the only way to encourage others is through song. So listen later on today, not much to the voice, but to the words. My voice may not be up to
We've had
scratch.
that before. Do you want to give us a teaser of that little bit, or do you want us to wait for 2 o'clock?
Yes, we shall overcome someday. See you at 2 o'clock.
2 p.m. is the launch time. Thank you very much, David Osiani, who's
Thank
a governance expert, for coming this morning to just look at what's making headlines and also review that the week that has been. It is now just about 5 minutes to 8 o'clock. We're going to take a short break, but do stay with us. Today's Friday, and as usual, Fridays we kind of do it differently, and we're going to be having hot topics and celebrity chat right here with much more lined up for you. So do stay with us. We're taking that break. We'll be right back on the other side of the break.